Delta Force was first released in 1998 and was a tactical shooter developed by Novalogic, a company based in California until its acquisition by THQ Nordic in 2016. 9 games were released in the series, to the tune of about 1 game every year. Although saying it had 9 games is a bit of a lie, as one was a standalone expansion and another was considered a remake of the first. The last official release was in 2009, with Novalogic planning to release a new game in 2016 called Delta Force Angel Falls, but that never happened. In 2012, Novalogic tried to sue Activision for using the name Delta Force in Modern Warfare 3, claiming that the usage would cost some players and damage their reputation. Novalogic, unsurprisingly, lost the case. I don't know what they were expecting, honestly. They also had to pay a fine of $150,000 for using Apple, Microsoft, and other companies' software without their permission, or as normal people call it, pirating. Don't throw stones in glass houses, kids. 7 years without making any games, a costly lawsuit, and a fine that hit them when they were at their lowest. To add on to that, many people already left the studio, and it was a shell of what it used to be in the late 90s. Surprisingly, they were involved in helping the US Army develop the Land Warrior system, versions of which are still being tested to this day, and I quote, Novalogic also has continued strategic partnerships with defense contractors such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Sikorsky. These guys somehow went from game developers to the military-industrial complex. God bless America! In 2016, THQ Nordic bought them out, and they've been quiet ever since. Like, I don't know whether they still even make games anymore, or even exist. Their website is still up, and they still have leaderboards for Delta Force 2, but the website looks like it hasn't been updated in years. As far as I know, Novalogic might be just 5 dudes in an office at the Pentagon working on some classified project. I just don't know. That's all I'm going to talk about the old Delta Force games. I never played any of them, and I don't feel that I can judge their quality fairly because of that. I recommend you check out Nick360's video if you're curious. The man makes good content and covers that stuff better than I ever could. Now, in 2023, Tencent announced Delta Force, free to play with massive multiplayer battles, and a campaign to go along with it. The future seemed brighter for the series than it has been in years. And then the game itself released. The game uses Anti-Cheat Expert, a kernel-level anti-cheat system used by Tencent. What this means is that it has the highest possible control over your own computer. This is also worrying because ACE is considered a Chinese military company by the US Department of Defense. Why do actual governments and militaries keep showing up in this series? No, seriously, it's weird. Timestamps are in the video if you're looking for any specific part. Let's get into it. Black Hawk Down is not only a great movie, but also a real-life historical event in which the US military suffered 18 dead and 84 American servicemen wounded in Mogadishu, Somalia. To say it was a shit show is a massive understatement. American forces, including Rangers and Delta Force, were sent into Mogadishu to capture a warlord in order for peacekeeping operations in the region. What was supposed to be a quick raid turned into a prolonged fight as 3 Black Hawks were shot down with RPGs by the city militia, and an American pilot was captured and another killed by an angry mob. American forces pushed into the city and defended the downed helicopters, rescuing anyone they could, and fighting against almost an entire city that was rising up against them. 1,500 SNA troops targeted them, as well as anyone else who volunteered. Militia fired from windows with AK-47s, as RPGs were launched from the rooftops, and mobs armed with whatever they could find attacked whenever they could find an opening. Through an entire night and into the next day, fighting raged, ending with a convoy retreating with all survivors and exhausted soldiers running behind APCs that had no room left, evacuating as dead Americans were dragged through the streets in celebration. 6 months after the battle, all US forces would pull out of Somalia. 2 years later in 1995, all UN forces left Somalia in shame. With the US being so reluctant to continue operations, it was called Somalia Syndrome. Estimates of enemy casualties go from 200 to 700 enemy fighters, with another 800 believed to be wounded. While the mission was technically a success, the cost was so high that I consider it a Pyrrhic victory. A great movie and book have been released about the battle, and I recommend you check both of them out. There is a lot to talk about this battle, both in the battle itself, the interactions between the SNA commanders and the Americans, and the political fallout that affected the region. But that's for another time. Renditions of the Battle of Mogadishu are relatively rare in games, with Delta Force the older titles being some of the few to feature it. But I'm sorry to say the Black Hawk Down campaign, and Delta Force itself, is terrible. First off, the game asks you to download it inside the game itself, which is a lie. You have to go to the store and download it as DLC. I wasted about 3 hours of my life letting Delta Force try to download the campaign in-game, when what I actually had to do was go to the store and install it as free DLC. Now when you actually get in, there's even more issues to deal with. It runs multiplayer at the same time you're playing the campaign, so it nukes your CPU. Not to mention, all of the controls have been reset, which means you're going to have to go to settings and rebind most of the controls before you can even play. Now you have two options, quick play and co-op. Quick play just puts you together with a group of random people, while co-op lets you select the mission, and you have to play each mission in order. Players can't join either mid-match or after you complete the mission, which means that the team you start with, you're stuck with. Which sucks when you hit a brick wall and one person out of 4 people leave, and you and the other dude can't complete the mission by yourselves. And then one other person leaves, and now the mission is impossible to complete. This is made even worse by the fact that the game has multiple loading screens, and every time you lose a mission, you can't just choose a different mission after. You are locked onto that mission, in particular until you leave the game and match with someone else, which takes even more time, and when you do, the game launches and closes again. Every single time. There are 4 people you can choose between each mission, and each one does a different thing, although surprisingly only 2 of them directly benefit your team. The medic can refill bandages, and the machine gunner can give out ammo. The sniper has access to a proper sniper rifle, and the assault class gets more grenades, however can't do anything to directly help your other teammates. The enemies and the environment you face are also an issue. There is a severe lack of variety in enemy design. You're only going to see 4 types: riflemen, machine gunners, snipers, and RPG guys. Machine gunners and riflemen practically operate the same. It's actually fairly disappointing that you never see anybody with a machete, or somebody using part of a trash can or metal as an improvised ballistic shield, which when you read the book, it's mentioned how some of the militia used women and children as shields, as well as charge in groups wielding machetes and sometimes sticks. The amount of damage you can take easily in this game is insane. Not only is your health limited and it's very easy to take damage, but it operates by a system where it's green, yellow, and red. The more hits you take, the more it goes down until you die. Which seems fair, but the only way to recover health is by locking yourself in an animation that often takes up to 5 seconds and leaves you very vulnerable. And this is made even worse by the fact that most of the enemies are highly accurate, and some enemies, like the snipers, will kill you in around 2 seconds if they feel like it. Not only that, but most of the enemy AIs aren't dumb. They use cover, they ambush you and hide in corners. They even spawn in behind you and try to ambush you when they aren't looking. Now, this might be doable if the map wasn't cluttered as hell and the enemies are near impossible to see clearly. Often, enemies don't stand out in the environment, and you can very easily die to some mook that you didn't see, which doesn't feel fair, and is incredibly frustrating. You and your entire team can die in seconds, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it doesn't feel fun at all. Urban warfare sucks. I get that. But the game doesn't have to beat me over the head with it until I don't want to play it anymore. It also lacks many things that are standard in other co-op PvE shooters, such as text chat in-game, or the ability to ask teammates for ammo or health directly. The only way to communicate with teammates is voice chat or by pinging a location, which sucks when the campaign obviously requires a lot of teamwork to complete, and the game itself makes it incredibly hard to communicate with your teammates. When I need ammo, I should be able to ask my machine gunner for ammo and not have to stand in front of him awkwardly until he realizes I do need that. This is a basic feature in many co-op shooters, and the fact that it isn't here is disappointing. And after every time you heal, there is a slight delay where you stand still for a moment, which can cost you the mission. Oh, and also some of the text randomly switches to Chinese for no apparent reason. The Delta Force campaign is not ready for release. And frankly, it fails at being a co-op shooter. I have the sense that they couldn't decide whether the campaign was going to be an actual campaign, or more like a co-op standard PvE shooter. There are a few cinematics, and generally they're well acted and they look pretty good. And there's a moment in the campaign where the characters actually show some personality and have some thoughts about the situation they're going through. But your teammates really don't talk to each other or exchange dialogue throughout the mission and the cinematics. Only one of the team, the sergeant, actually talks to the commander. The story doesn't do anything and honestly just seems like filler, which is strange given the high quality of the cinematics themselves. So that just leaves the missions, and boy oh boy are they something. Generally, the mission objectives are pretty simple. Go to this area and shoot these guys, or run to this area while dealing with and avoiding being shot by all the enemies in your path. Every once in a while you get to do something like ride in a Humvee and use the machine gun. But there's nothing really crazy here, which honestly I appreciate. You're not a super soldier, you're just a squad trying to make the best of a terrible situation. The atmosphere is great, the levels look detailed, and the weapons have great feedback. And driving past civilians as they barricade the roads, throw rocks at you, and mock you, while knowing that you can't shoot them because they aren't shooting at you directly, is a very interesting experience that no other game that I'm aware of offers. But actually playing the missions is a very unpleasant experience, where you constantly die to stuff you don't see and snowballs until it's nearly impossible to complete. It feels like they didn't playtest this whatsoever, and it shows. You don't even get AI teammates. But friendly AI already exists in the game. Why can't your squad just get replaced by them? Or maybe they know the difficulty is broken, but just don't care. I love going through a dark hallway and shooting guys who are popping out of corners and trying to surprise me. Most of the game is instead you getting your butt handed to you and your teammates leaving. Frankly, I struggled to play through the campaign, and I don't think it's worth your time. Here are some ideas on how they could actually improve the campaign and make an experience that a lot of people would actually want to go through and play. Number 1 is add the game in the campaign as an update and not as free DLC. This would actually incentivize people to check it out. This would also have the benefit of not nuking my CPU, and not having to rebind all my controls once I start up the game. Number 2, allow other players to actually drop in either mid-match or once you complete a mission, allow others to join you. This would alleviate the issue of people leaving either during a match or afterward, and then you being able to move forward in the campaign without going through 10 minutes of loading screens and not being able to replay the same mission. Number 3, the health system. Make it so that you can heal from yellow to green or from red to yellow over time, but don't make it so that you can just wait and fully heal. Not only is it incredibly aggravating to spend precious seconds healing yourself with a limited amount of bandages, but your health is already so low that you can die if a single enemy gets a good second or two to light you up. Not having to use my limited med packs every single time an enemy sneezes in my direction would make the missions a lot less aggravating. Number 4. The medic and the machine gunner both have direct benefits to the team, as one gives you ammo and the other refills your medkits. Sniper and assault should also have their own abilities that favor the team, instead of just their own weapons. Allowing the sniper to highlight RPG and snipers would go a long way to helping deal with the enemy visual clarity, while the assault should be able to give grenades to teammates and have a flashbang. The medic also should be able to directly heal your teammates and much more quickly, as well as when they revive a teammate they come back with full health. I mean, they are a medic after all. Number 5. Add a wheel system that is seen in Darktide and Apex Legends. Being able to request my teammates for ammo and healing would be a godsend, as well as asking a teammate to come with me or request cover. Number 6. Actual difficulty selection. The PvE raid and operations already has this. Some parts of the campaign are really fun, but unfortunately it's dragged down by multitudes of issues that other co-op shooters solved long ago. Don't waste your time with this. If you want a competent modern tactical co-op shooter, pick either SCP-5K, Ready or Not, or Fallujah. If you want a cool military dude campaign, play any Call of Duty from the last 4 years. Or, like, ever, really. It feels like they rushed this out just so they could ignore it and focus on the skins that they sell for the hero characters, which we'll get to later on. Frankly, it's a shame because I see the bones of something really good here, but I doubt the developers care enough to fix it. In fact, I don't even think the developers wanted to make a Delta Force game, and I'll explain that at the end. Other co-op games are better at being co-op games, and other shooters have better campaigns. Besides the setting, there's really nothing new or unique here for you to set your teeth into. Menus. Dear God on earth, there are so many different menus. There are menus that lead back to menus and menus. This is the first time I have ever played a game that gives me so many menus and expects me to click on every single one to get a minor reward. You have to click on every single individual menu. There is no button to hit that gives you all your stuff. However, they realized this was a bad idea, so all the menus or most of them have a claim all button, which makes me wonder why they couldn't just do this on the main menu itself. This is when Delta Force feels like it's designed as a mobile game at heart. And not the good ones either. I'm talking the trash ones that harass you with 10 things you have to X out of, and each one shows you an offer for $10, which is on sale from $15 for a few days. You know the ones, you've seen them. Oh, wait, they actually have that. Don't you want to buy the skin? It's on sale. You click around a bunch to claim almost meaningless rewards. It's boring, repetitive, and drives you a little bit insane. And did I mention they have almost 15 different battle passes? I'm sorry, I can't talk about battle passes or menus anymore. I got PTS now. I'm sorry, that sounded better in my head. Basically, the menus suck. Extraction shooters are a favorite genre of mine. After all, my most popular video as of now has been Hunt Showdown, and I did play Arena Breakout for a bit, but I've never touched Tarkov, and I never will. Especially because of one major issue that also appears in this game: cheaters. But we're not at that point quite yet, so let's go back to explaining what exactly extraction shooters are for people who have never played them. And the simplest way to put it is, you and a team are put into a map that has other enemy players that are also in teams. You often face AI enemies, and your mission is simple. Either complete the objective, or loot as much money, and loot that isn't nailed down like you're a Chicago resident. These can vary in anything from kill a big bad boss to collect money and loot the local mall. The enemy players that you can encounter are the real threat of the game and what the whole thing is built around. Now, it's called Operations in this game, and in my opinion it is almost unplayable. Almost. The gist is that there is a country that is unstable, and Delta Force, GTI, has been sent in to bring order and keep things going. In the mix is a company called Havoc that has its own private military and has invested in some very powerful, dangerous technology that GTI wants to get rid of. The country, Asara, is in civil war. GTI is there to stop it, and a company called Havoc is playing around where it shouldn't, and is also interfering in the local destabilized region. Pretty simple. Now I'm going to talk about what I like first about the mode, because boy do I have some pretty terrible things to say later on. First up is that the maps are generally impressive, and there's multiple of them, 5 if my eye surgery actually did its job. They are generally well detailed, large, and recognizably different from each other. The enemy NPCs, while not incredibly unique and different from others you've seen in games before, do require different approaches to take them out effectively, although the method of just shooting the weak spot works out pretty well. You have Shield Guy, Sniper, Minigunner, and an Antifa cosplayer with a rifle. Yeah, I've seen these types of enemies in games multiple times before, but there's usually enough around that you don't go crazy from seeing the same type over and over again. You can do side missions in each map like killing guards or assassinating a target or looting a safe. And they give you extra money as well as extra loot. And an early escape option because if you have some money early in game, you can extract via one of the paid extractions. And the raids. The raids are PvE co-op shooter missions. You can do quick play to match up with 3 peeps, and then you go in with any gear or weapons you have on to complete the mission and gain rewards. Weapon tickets, which basically function as a battle pass, or some other form of upgrading any of the battle passes. At the end of the mission, all the gear and bullets and anything you spent you get back. And there is some solid mission design and cutscenes and a story. It has 3 difficulties, and the difficulty you choose affects how many enemies spawn in, how difficult they are to deal with, and also how much damage they do and your rewards. This is really strange when I look at the campaign and see how much of a difference there is. The raid came out months earlier too. Frankly, it's baffling how one can actually be well designed and fun, whereas in the other, which was one of the main selling points of the game, is absolute trash. They had a good formula. How did they mess it up so bad? There's only one raid in the game as of this time, but I do like the idea a lot and how it interacts with the extraction mode. Do extractions to get money, use money to get great gear for the higher level raid, and then do operations again to get more money so you can get even different, better gear. Dang, I could upgrade my shotgun, but I'd rather use that 100k on upgrading my pistol. Here's a Detroit greeting from America. High tier gear is very expensive, but also very effective. This thing is going to make a bullet hurt way less than this thing. But the flip side is that you can only get these by doing the operations mode to get money. And you get those by doing missions and objectives and extracting with valuable loot. Basically, people are incentivized to extract with as much money as possible so that they can get great gear that they can use on the higher tier operations level. That lets them unlock more stuff, and there you see the loop. Now I hear you ask, if that is the main draw of the loop, then why do they only have one raid? Cosmetics, apparently. Because that's what the new mode Hot Zone is all about. 3v3v3 match for a mantle brick, which unlocks some unique skins, and also a lot of charms for your gun. Now, onto maps. Zero Dam and Loyola Grove are the 2 you should stick to most often. Brikesh, Space City, and Valkyr attract nothing but sweats, trolls, and hackers. Save your time, please. The Grove and the Dam generally have much more chill and less tryhard players, and the consequences for dying are far less severe. That said, I know I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I know for a fact I will go back to those maps. And the reason why is because they are some of the most stressful experiences I've ever had in gaming. And sometimes you need to experience artificial stress instead of real life stress. You can upgrade your facilities to occasionally give you gear and better stats and equipment without paying for it. However, these can get ridiculously expensive to upgrade, and you're level capped in the upgrades as well. It feels like a money sink and a resource sink when you can just sell something expensive that you don't need to save up for a long time to use in a very specific upgrade, and could just sell it on the free market for a few $100,000, but then later on you'll need it and it costs much more on the auction house. And honestly, once I've played all the maps a few times, there's no reason to keep going. The only motivation for getting the super high level gear and ammo, so you can go into the other maps that are often filled with cheaters and other players who have never once left their room in the past few years. It's just frankly unfun and unenjoyable. The raid is pretty interesting, but it's surrounded by a lackluster story and there only being one level. If they cut down on the cheaters, added more raids, and vastly decreased how many menus I have to go through, I would be much more likely to keep playing this on in the future. But as it stands right now, no, I'm just not going to keep playing it. Hunt Showdown calls to me once again. And the crazy thing was, I played this game during its playtest and the extraction mode was actually really fun. It didn't seem like most people I met were cheating. You could win a fight. It was actually something I enjoyed. Now onto something everyone hates. Cheaters. Boy oh boy, cheaters. Terrible in real life just like in game. Cheaters in this game are more prevalent than I would like to admit, and you almost always know it's a cheater because you go down instantly to the point where I avoid other players in the maps because I know I have an almost 0% chance of winning. It is very simply unfun to spend minutes choosing your loadout, loading into a match, completing some objectives and gaining some loot, and then dying in 2 seconds to a dude who's wall hacking and aimbotting. And this is prevalent in the multiplayer too, although not to the extent that I sometimes saw in operations. Now, about the characters. I hate them. They all have files you can read that give their backstory, and audio lines that you can use in game like Overwatch. But the thing is, you have to make your characters likable for people to actually like them and buy cool skins. Overwatch and Rainbow Six Siege does this through cinematics, crossover content, and extremely good voice acting. Call of Duty does this by making a fairly good to decent campaign, and then selling the characters in the cash shop and using them as operators. Delta Force has maybe 3 to 5 cinematics, and all of them are short, don't show off their character's personality at all, and most importantly, lack the coolness factor. 20 to 10 guys with pistols just standing in front of each other and shooting away is very cool, didn't you know? And they also clash with the tone of the game. Side tangent, I want to point out that Delta Force is developed by a Chinese team, and 2 of the heroes are Russian, with the Russian dude being a great teacher and a good person who defends others. And the Russian girl is cool and super smart and uses advanced tech. Given the war in Ukraine, I find it pretty funny how Delta Force is one of the few games making good Russians still. Now let's look at something like Hunt Showdown. Yeah, some of the characters look a little goofy or stupid, but 90% of them fit in the theme of Haunted West and swamps. And the ones that are weird and clash with the tone of the game are in the item shop, and you don't have to look at them all the time or be reminded of their existence. This is not an option in Delta Force. They are front and center. Most of the cinematics present a tone that is mostly gritty and slightly realistic. And then you look at them in game, see how they look and act, and you go, how the hell are these people part of a peacekeeping operation to bring a country back from hell? You watch a cutscene and a dude guns down a poor person running away for his life for sport. And then you unlock a new voice line and it says something like,
"The arrow is an extension of my will."
It just does not fit. Another example. In Arena Breakout, the traders are represented by these pictures. You never talk to them in person, and by the atmosphere the game is setting and how the missions themselves are arranged, it's clear that you are part of their world, but they are not part of yours. You're just a tool to live and die for others with their own goal, maybe making some money and a better gun if you're lucky. It wouldn't make sense if this person showed up and started acting like she could kill 20 dudes by herself easily. You're blowing down a compound to kill soldiers, serving a dictator who is destroying a country, serving a peacekeeping organization that is waging an active all-out war against a powerful corporation, and this is you. First off, the story. It's there, barely, and not very interesting. Sure, seeing a jet go up and explode into a satellite, crashing down to the earth is amazing to watch. But at the same time, I don't know why it's crashing, and I don't really find any of the characters likable or appealing. Pretty much the only thing I remember about the story is that one cinematic. Or more specifically, that one part of that cinematic, because I don't remember anything else. The game doesn't care about its story, and really neither should you. And also, it's really strange in that being a game named Delta Force, the main faction that are the good guys are called the Global Threat Initiative, or GTI. You're not playing the group the game is named after. Imagine Ghost Recon, but you play as a ranger the entire campaign. Or The Witcher, but you don't play as a witcher, instead as a nurse in an ICU unit. Or Overwatch, but you play as a Rainbow Six Siege member. Some items make a reference to Delta Force, but the two main modes don't feature them at all. The campaign that features them is half-baked and clearly not ready. It's like they picked the name and then made the campaign half-baked to justify it, and are now focused on selling skins. Which is a shame because I'm a sucker for near-future special ops warfare with advanced technology. Ghost Recon Future Soldier will be getting a video, believe that. This may seem surprising, but I don't have nearly as much to say on multiplayer as I do the extraction or campaign mode, and the reason for that is there really isn't much to say. The maps are fairly well detailed and designed, but they also aren't very striking and they're not very memorable. Sure, you can design some of the guns so that they're weird or crazy, such as this really cool AUG I would give my left arm for in real life, but you've also seen everything here in Battlefield and other games. There are no guns that you look at and you go, oh damn, I've never seen that before. All the vehicles are standard tanks and helicopters that are in every Battlefield game ever. And there's less variety too. The music is mediocre. I don't remember a single track except for the Somalian dude singing. I'll be as clear as I can. The multiplayer is copying Battlefield 2042, but does pretty much everything worse. There are no crazy weather storms, or rockets launching, or Easter eggs to discover. Honestly, playing as nameless GTI soldiers in Havoc Security would be a much more interesting experience. You could still sell unique skins for each faction in each class, and would draw a lot more Battlefield players who have been very vocal about how much they hate the hero formula. And I know they're called specialists, but let's be honest, they're really heroes in function. One of the core reasons Battlefield 2042 failed so badly is that Battlefield fans simply did not like it. And Killing Floor 3 is doing the exact same thing, and it's already hated by its community. I do not understand this push for heroes and specialists except as a way to sell unique skins. Unless your game is built around having heroes like Overwatch is, it falls flat. I don't want my favorite gun or tool being locked to a character I dislike, and I think many others feel the same. And I really don't see Delta Force's multiplayer being good enough to overcome that. Tying the hero system to a massive multiplayer battle just does not work. Honestly, what I think happened is that the developers saw the success of Overwatch and tried to copy that system to their own games. You see a cool character you like their playstyle, and you're much more likely to buy their skins, and thus the shareholders get more money. The difference is Overwatch is a small PvP hero shooter that is built around that system, whereas in trying to force that system into other game types, or game genres that have never used that system before, is ultimately going to result in failure and your fans being upset that something that they have grown too accustomed to has changed suddenly in a much different direction. The multiplayer is free and you can have a lot of fun with it, but I don't see it gripping a steady player base for a long time. It also suffers in that if you upgrade a gun enough, you can select a pre-built loadout by the designers or streamers that make that gun way more powerful, such as this P90. No other game I know has this system for good reason. If you hand out the meta, everyone will use the meta. It takes away exploring and experimentation, and feels more like a cheat code than something you would actually use. What Delta Force does good, other games do better. What it does bad, other games do way better. It's free and that's a big positive, and there are a few hours of fun you can definitely squeeze out of it. But it's like hearing about this badass dude who was around a few years ago and he's coming back to town with a modern look. And then you meet him and he has his haircut and is trying to sell you vapes and crypto all the time he's around you. He's fun for a bit, but eventually you move on. I massively respect the developers for what they do. But this game is not good or really bad. It's just playable and okay. And sometimes being average is worse than being good or bad. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you, random citizen. Stay cool, and next time we'll be dropping from orbit.